how will AI and humans coexist successfully? Do you see AI as a way to just cut costs and become more efficient? Or do you see AI as a way to unlock insane potential in the team that you have? We wrote this book as kind of a GPS, a guide for companies and leaders to figure out, like, how do we do this in the best possible way?
The truth is, like, it's a new technology. You need to figure out how to use it. Only those who adapt survive. It's the only way to survive. So how do you adapt?
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
Listen to this. Listen to this.
Memorable?
Well, then be less boring.
Boring?
Remarkable.
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 I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. You're listening to Remarkable. This week, we're talking marketing lessons from the Human Success Playbook with the help of our special guest, Chief Business Officer at Zensai, and now author of this book, Robin Daniels. Robin, how are you?
Good, Ian. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you again. Robin is an old pal, so very exciting to dig into this book that he wrote. He's an author now. What a better time. And Robin's had a super interesting background with stops as CMO at Matterport, at WeWork, and many other places. And you've seen a lot, you've done a lot. And I think it's really an important time to talk about human success and what that looks like. and that's why we're so excited to have you on the show. So why the heck did you write the book?
It's been a dream of mine for a long time to write a book. I come from a family of authors, so it's always kind of been in my DNA. And I've always been thinking about writing a book. But I've always been struggling a little bit with what the topic should be and how timely it is. Right now, I think based on every conversation I'm having with CEOs, boards, business leaders, influencers, advisors, you name it, the number one question that comes up over and over again is, how will AI and humans coexist successfully? And how can we make sure that this happens where we stand on the side of humans? And most people I speak to, they do want to stand on the side of humans. It's probably the most urgent question, the most important question of our time, as we see the rise of AI and every company being inspired to use it or sometimes even forced to use it. So I wrote the book, and I have two co-authors, the CEO of my company and also the Chief Human Success Officer of my company, Nina. We wrote the book together to give kind of some different perspectives on how you integrate AI with a company successfully, knowing that you basically have a binary choice to start, which is, do you see AI as a way to just cut costs and become more efficient? Or do you see AI as a way to unlock insane potential in the team that you have? And so you start there, and then you can go in different directions. And of course, for us, we believe in the notion that humans can become much better, much more productive, much more creative with the use of AI. And so when I see these headlines from these big tech companies, or even outside of tech, laying off people because of AI, it frustrates me, because I think there's something that you could do to invest in the skills of those people, train them how to use AI, give them maybe new goals, and maybe they can actually find new growth paths, new revenue paths for you, and so on. But we wrote the book really as a guide to become like a GPS in some ways for organizations to figure out, well, how do we actually do this successfully? And it's based on these hundreds of conversations. It's based on our own business doubling in revenue over the last 3 years. It's based on our business being named a great place to work 3 years in a row by our employees. It's not something I take lightly. And we're not perfect, right? And nobody has the full answer, but we wrote this book as kind of a GPS, a guide for companies and leaders to figure out, like, how do we do this in the best possible way?
It's interesting. Like, the question that sort of like is being asked, I almost reject the premise. It's like, it's such a silly thing. And I know that there's so much conversation and fear mongering, all these sort of things, but it's just a silly premise to me to sort of say, like, are humans or robots like gonna win? Like, that's like just so, why, like, we even waste like 1 minute of our entire life worrying about this? And for some people, they love worrying about that. Like, for me, it's like such a ridiculous premise. Like, it's so crazy. And it just feels like, to the question that you posed, is how, right? It's like, how do you use this new technology in your business to take your business to the next level and not get left behind? And like, that's not fear mongering. Like, every technological change people get left behind. Like that's just how it is, right?
Yep.
And it's like,
Agree.
right? It's like when the record player was the greatest thing until 8 tracks came along. And when 8 tracks came along, a bunch of people pivoted to 8 tracks, and then they pivoted eventually to CDs. And that is like, that is the way that technology works. AI is a piece of technology. And I know that there's a lot of fear about it and there's displacement, all sorts of things, not to like trivialize that, but like the truth is like, it's a new technology. You need to figure out how to use it. It would be the equivalent of saying like, I just want to listen to 8 tracks forever. And that is your choice as like a consumer. If you want to do that, that's fine. But like the world is going to continue going. So as with everything, only those who adapt survive. It's the only way to survive. So how do you adapt? And it's like, you just got given, a supercomputer. Back in the day, there were no computers at all. Like, and then everybody had company computers, and then they had personal computers, and then they had computers on their phone. And now we have a supercomputer that lives in the sky. So it's like, and the thing is, your company gets access to the same supercomputer that the billionaires or whoever it is, the highest of the high, they have the same access that you have to this multi-billion dollar, trillion-dollar supercomputer. So like, figure out how to use it, figure out how to make your business better.
Totally. I think through enough of these revolutions, and they each get more exponentially larger. I came up, I started my career in the internet revolution back in the late 90s. And then, of course, it became the cloud revolution. Then it became the mobile revolution. And now we're in the AI revolution. And you're absolutely right. They all lead to massive disruption. I'm not naive enough to think that it's not going to lead to massive disruption. Of course, it's going to. I've seen it at Salesforce, Box, LinkedIn, WeWork, all these companies you've mentioned, all these disruptions happening. What this book is trying to do, and what I'm trying to be a guide for, is every CEO, I think more or less, is probably getting pressure either from their public company, Wall Street, or maybe if they're private companies, from their board to be more efficient, cut costs, cut 30%, 40%, 50% of your costs, and just use AI instead. And then the question is, well, how, and what happens to all the people and all these kind of things that it's not as easy. So the book itself is set up as a narrative. I have a lot of business books and I love reading business books to get inspired, but I wanted to write something a little bit differently. So it's written more as a narrative. And the book starts with a CEO. His name is Evan, and he's being asked by his board to cut 40% of the company. And he refuses to do so. He says, no, I think there's a better way. Let me show that investing in my people will lead to better outcomes, lead to better growth. Let's actually give us some time to retool the whole organization, reorganize ourselves, reskill ourselves, use technology as a superpower. And then he has basically 8 months to solve this. So it becomes kind of a hero's journey in some way. And you also have the tension of a ticking clock, because if he doesn't succeed, he's going to get fired. And then board will let go of 40% of the company anyway. And it becomes this, race to actually fix this. And it's a little bit more exciting now. It's kind of like the Luke Skywalker hero's journey, where there's, and the bad guy in the book is not really AI. I don't want anybody to think that. It's not like, I think AI, you have to, like you just said, you have to use it. It's not even like, it's just like you have to use a smartphone and you have to use a computer and so on. The bad guy is ignorance or fear, and just like being driven by the headlines that this is the best way to like run your company. Because again, if we think long-term in the future, in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you can even see all the AI leaders from Anthropic and OpenAI pulling back their statements saying it's going to lead to massive unemployment and all this stuff, because they are also realizing this is not a good narrative to have. Let's use this instead.
True.
It's
That's
not true. Exactly. It's not true. I don't buy it either. I don't buy it either. Yeah, exactly. No. I mean, will some roles be made redundant? Will there be? Of course. Like we just said, this is going to happen in every technology revolution. But think about what it will unlock as well. And I'm very much an optimist and want to be on the side of history that is focused on that part where we use it to say, hey, think about my team. We're a small company, just over 200 people, even myself. How much time I spend on admin work or data synthesis or trying to like get some clarity around something. And AI is going to come in and be able to do that so much better, which gives me more time and focus back to be able to do the things I'm good at. And that should be true of everybody in a company. So it's not about, I think, getting rid of all these people to just be more efficient. It's about how do you unlock their full potential? Because I truly believe that everyone has something that they're really creatively good at, whether that's problem solving, analytics, business, acumen, whatever it is. Everyone has something, but if you can actually find time to focus on that, that can lead to new ways of growing your business that maybe you hadn't even thought of before. And so focus on that and give it some time to make that happen, because it's not going to happen overnight either. I mean, like this, going in and saying to your employees, you all have to use AI to kind of do your job better. It's kind of like having turkeys vote for Christmas. It just doesn't work. Like you're gonna have them all, but I think, why should I use AI to just kind of be replaced one day? So you have to figure out from a leadership, more than anything, I think right now, it's a leadership imperative to figure out how do you actually make this happen in a way that doesn't create so much fear in your organization, but creates the opportunity to actually be bold and do something different.
Yeah, I think that organizational change is like one of the hardest things, and changing the way things were. And I think like psychologically, you say, if we're a group of people and we're sitting in a valley and we got a lake, and every year the lake dries up a little bit and like it freezes over, it's like kind of cold and we're kind of miserable, and you see a mountain over there and you go, I wonder what's on the other side of that mountain. And this is like part of the human condition. It's literally how we spread as humans from Africa to everywhere else on the globe, right?
That's right.
Is the idea of like, what's on the other side of the mountain? And somebody's got to go climb the mountain, go look over to the other side and go, hey, there's actually a way bigger lake over there. And they've got bigger fish, and they've got, a herd of bison and whatever else. And it's the same exact thing with AI, which is like, it's so hard because when you're sitting, where you are now, the only thing that like logically you can do is look around and say, this is going to replace what we know is that it's going to create. We know that because we've seen it over and over and over again.
That's
like
right.
in 1995, there was no such thing as a Salesforce admin. There was no such thing as, a consulting company that just serves Salesforce. I mean, Blue Wolf built into like $1 billion business just serving Salesforce customers. You were there early days. Like you could never have imagined those. So
I agree.
as a leader, you need to paint a picture of a world that you don't know what it's going to look like in the future, but you know that it is going to be different. And you know that if everybody sort of agrees to say, I'm going to embrace the challenge and like go up the mountain, that something, is going to be on the other side, because on the other side of a mountain is always something. Mountains don't go forever. There is another side to the mountain. It's not possible for it to just go on forever. So you know that there's going to be something there, and everyone needs to be prepared as good as you possibly can for whatever is on the other side.
To dive into that, I think this is where I think a lot of leaders are struggling right now, because in an environment of extreme uncertainty, there always has been to some extent, but I mean, right now it's just it's being compressed so much that nobody kind of really knows what is beyond that mountain. How do you then lead when there's so much uncertainty? I always think of it this way: is that, I mean, the team doesn't like bad news, which I think is obvious, and they prefer good news. Okay, that's also obvious. But actually, what they really dislike, most employees, is uncertainty. So how do you, as a leader, because it's really hard to do great work if you don't know what you're working towards, right? So as a leader, I think it's exactly what you said. You have to go in and paint that vision and be certain enough, but with flexibility and agility enough that you can change over time as the environment changes around you. And that's a like extremely hard skill to get people to go along with you and believe in that vision. This is where I think the power of storytelling, communication, persuasion, EQ, empathy, all this stuff comes into play, right? Because you have to force convince people individually, but also using a company at scale. And you have to provide that level of certainty, but knowing that, even within your gut, because I see it a lot, I also do advisory or advise companies. A lot of them are uncertain. They don't know what the next year, 2, 3 years is going to look like. It doesn't really change the fact that it's your job as a leader to put a vision out there and have the courage to stand by that. Even if in a year later you say, hey, we were 80% right of it or 60% right, but doing nothing is not an option. Then you're just going to have everybody frozen. They're not going to do any great work if that's the case. So I think it's a tough time being a leader to because you don't know, but it doesn't change the fact it's always been tough to be a leader. So when I hear people say, "Oh, it's so tough," suck it up. This is Buttercup. This is about being a leader. Being a leader has always been tough. Now you just have to have the courage to stand out in front and ideally be right, but also be wrong.
Yeah, I think like having a vision of that North Star is really important. I'll give you two like quick examples on our end, and this is a show about making remarkable content, and like content has changed like so much in the past, 48 months, and how you do it. But I think if you sort of go back to the idea of what you're trying to do, like for us at Caspian, like we are trying to help B2B marketing teams connect with their communities, right? To create content that serve their communities, to educate, to inspire, and entertain, right? Like that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do those three things. And so like, I'll take an example. Shout out to Scott on our team who's going to be listening to this. Scott was an audio engineer. What we needed when Scott first came to the company was like just strictly audio engineering, because that's what the vast majority of the work that we needed was, just strictly audio engineering. And over time, that changes. It becomes video engineering. It becomes different types of filming. It requires different skill sets. It requires like learning different things, different cameras, different whatever. And it's like, if all he ever wanted to do was like just audio engineering, that's not what our company does. Our company doesn't do audio engineering. Our company makes content that is hopefully good enough to earn the audience's trust and to educate, inspire, and entertain them. One of the ways in which we do that requires extremely great audio engineering. But like, that's not what we're trying to do. So everyone in the organization needs to figure out that like what their job is whatever is required to be in service of the customer and what you're trying to do. And if like, and if that means you're sitting in accounting, then that's your job. Like, that's why I always like the definition of a company that's like, there's only two things that you do, is like you make stuff and you sell it. Like that is the only thing. Everyone in the company is in service of those two things, no matter who you are. Right?
Totally
like,
agree.
And like, as someone who used to be in HR and supporting like, war fighters in the army, it's like my entire job was just to make sure that the people who were on the ground had everything they needed to be present on the ground mentally in that moment. And like, whether you're in accounting or HR or cybersecurity or whatever, it's like your whole job is the exact same thing, to make stuff and to sell it in support of that. So it's like, yeah, is your job going to change? For sure. But your job is always going to change. Like everyone's job changes. There's no job that's the exact same as it was 100 years ago. Like maybe a lawyer is like similar, but like it's not, right? So
that's also why I spend a lot of time on motivation then, because I think motivation comes in two ways. I think you have external motivation, your boss telling you, you need to do this and you need to learn this skill. Like you could have said to Scott, hey, I need you to learn how to do video editing and become a video engineer, because we're moving beyond audio, like a lot of podcasts are doing. So you've got external motivation, but you also think internal motivation. I always think internal motivation ultimately trumps external motivation in some ways. Both are powerful for different reasons, right? Obviously, external motivation is like, if you don't do this, you might not have a job in 6 months, right? If you don't go learn this skill or adapt and so on. But internal motivation, the ability to be hungry and adapt and learn new skills and always think there's another level, I think is the most powerful by far. And the best people I've worked with have extremes of both, I think. They get that external force that kind of pushes them a little bit, mostly for the better, sometimes also for the worse. But that inner fire is like just key, right? And I know you've worked with a lot of the same people I've worked with, and you see that inner fire. They always believe that they're not happy just being complacent. There's always another level to learn. And that's that inner motivation that's really key.
Yeah, and I think it's about doing great work. And that's the thing, again, shout out to Scott. Scott, since the moment I met him, just wants to do great work. He wanted, like he comes from a music background and like making great songs. And he knows that making great songs requires a lot of stuff. It requires a band showing up and the cables working and all, like there's a million things that happen. Otherwise you don't get the record done the right way. And like,
I can't just use AI for that.
And like, even to that point, like for real, let's say, okay, hey, the world has changed. Now you can just make an AI song. Sure, you can. But like, okay, but where's the value derived from that thing? Okay, is the value derived from, okay, somebody listens to the song and they like it and it was an AI song? Great. Okay, well, whatever, great. But if you go talk to a musician or whatever, like the value of seeing the person in concert, of going there, of
That's right.
buying the t-shirt, of wearing the t-shirt, of talking about it with their friends. You know, we did an episode of this podcast on records that 50% of records that are purchased, physical records industry is booming right now. It's on a huge upswing. 50% of people who buy records don't own a record player. They are just supporting the artist. It is literally buying physical art for their wall.
Wow.
Right. So
that's
like,
crazy. Yeah,
so
yeah.
if, right. So you hear that and you go, okay, well, if I'm going to sit here as a creator and be like worried about AI music, A, what good is it to be worried? Right. That doesn't do anything for you. But B, is that going to replace you? No. Like what is going to replace you is a different artist who is better at connecting with their fans. Right.
Yeah.
It's like we've done a bunch of episodes about Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is one of the best artists in the history of artists at connecting with her fans. Like, that's why she's great. It's not just because of the music, right? So it's like the lesson is about going the extra mile. The lesson is about continually working at trying to find new and exciting ways to delight your customers constantly.
That's right.
And like one of the tools is now AI, you know, or the prevailing tool.
Yeah. I went and saw Taylor Swift in London on her Eras tour, and honestly, it was amazing. And it's funny because when I say this to people, and my team knows this, and they make fun of me, they think I'm a huge Swiftie, and I like her. I think she's super talented, but that was actually not why I went. I went because I just wanted to be like, I think she's such a great entertainer. The way she connects with an audience, the way she does storytelling, and I love stories. And I just think there's so much marketing to be learned from this. There's so much inspiration to be had. The way she like truly like makes people feel something, I think is really, really special. And she just like has elevated this to like an insanely great art form. So yeah, I went and saw her in London, I think about a year ago. Well, maybe about a year and a half ago. And it was just magical. But it was really because I think just knows how to do this at a scale and with an energy. And she shows up. She gives it her all. Right? It's like they're still phoning it in, and she does this for like 3.5 hours each day. It was just so impressive to see her do this. But yeah, I gotta go listen to some of these Taylor Swift episodes. You know?
Yeah, they're fun. They're always fun. Well, there's so many lessons there to take away.
Yeah, totally.
But I think, and that's like why I love doing this show, and that's why I think this show is so fun, is because we can assess this stuff. And it's like, again, it's not to say like, I think if you're saying like, is an AI song good or not is like the wrong question to ask. Like the audience gets to decide what they want. And if the audience, and again, the AI song, which is created by someone, right, who put the inputs in there or whatever. And again, if you hate it, great, don't listen to it. Like, great.
That's right.
So if that person goes and creates some AI song or whatever, and they put it out there in the world, and a bunch of people like it, whatever, and then they want to create a concert series where that person goes and plays their AI songs. It's like, and a bunch of people want to go show up to that. I think that you should be in tune enough to the world to understand that that is something that people are doing. And like, again, I'm not here to like defend or not defend AI. I literally don't care. Do whatever you want. Like it's a free world. Do whatever you want. But like people hated DJs because they sampled other people's songs and cut it together. Right? They hated them. They hated it. Like EDM, they hated EDM. So like,
that's right.
And again, not to say that like, I'm not even comparing that to AI. I'm just saying that if you're a person who is closed off to innovation, then you couldn't possibly have seen how important DJs became to the cultural zeitgeist. Like if you're just closed off to that, then you're not going to see innovation happening. And it often does not happen where you think it is.
This is also why I think what you're saying is so fascinating, because you can create a vision looking back, or you can create a vision trying to look forward.
Exactly.
Right? And this is what happens. I mean, I remember when The Phantom Menace came out in 1999, right?
Yeah.
And it was one of the first movies that was shot pretty much all on green screen. Yeah. It was all CG. And of course, what people did is they compared that to the original Star Wars movies that came out in the 70s and 80s, where everything felt dirty or organic. And in this like CG version, everything was just like perfect. Yeah. And it's like, if they had like they'd sold us being something different, vision of the future, but I think that it was too connected in some way. So it looked off, right? It's like, you have to like have this vision for where it's going to go. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, like, and now of course every big movie is using CG, right? But now it's so subtle you can't really tell. But back
I
then
mean,
it was like so obvious.
Scorsese just came out. He's like now on the board of an AI company, and he's talking about how he's going to use AI in his movies. And like this is Martin Scorsese. You know what I mean? So, and that's the sort of stuff where it's like Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin is like super, in on AI. And again, like it's just so emotionally driven, and these words carry weight, and like not to like understate any of that, but if you just replace the word AI with internet and or replaced it with mobile, right? It's like Rick Rubin is all in on mobile. You'd be like, oh, yeah, well, of course he's in on mobile. Like,
Who
5
wouldn't be?
billion people have smartphones now. Like, of course he's in on mobile, right?
That's
It's like,
right,
oh, he's
that's
all in
right.
on internet. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
everyone's connected to this thing that's in the sky. I do just, to me, it just feels like a lot of that's going to blow over. And I want to get back to your book and to the Human Success Playbook and this core issue of the CEO faced with a very real thing, which is the board saying cut 40% or else. And this person saying that there is another way. What is the other way? What should this CEO do?
There's a couple of things to do. I think you have to rethink your entire organization somewhat. I mean, the old way of like structuring your team is probably also very antiquated, meaning like it's very hierarchical in most companies. It's kind of, you were in the military, right? Similar fashion. You got a hierarchy, like a pyramid shape. In the future, I don't know if that's going to be the case. And our thesis is it's not. I think it's going to be very different. It's going to be based around the projects that you have to achieve. So you're going to organize around that, regardless of kind of the level of the people within an organization. You still have, of course, somebody to set the direction, somebody to guide that, but then you organize around projects versus just organizing around hierarchy, because hierarchies can easily slow things down in an organization, and there's very little appetite for that anymore. How do you then organize around projects? And that can be a combination of human skills and AI technology on top of that. Use maybe AI as kind of a team member that you would hire. Hey, we have to achieve this project. We're going to take a new product to market. We require some skills here. We've got good engineering skills. We've got good PM skills. We've got good, maybe like some digital marketing skills, but we're lacking some PR skills. Well, maybe this is where you actually bring in some AI technology that can help with augmenting that, right? So you organize around the projects much more, and you give them the freedom to be a little bit more agile. It's definitely one of the things that we were seeing now with very agile companies. You're also seeing that in a lot of AI companies. They do this much better. There's still somewhat of a hierarchy. I don't know if that will go away completely, but I think it's a little antiquated. More and more organizations have become much flatter, because even the very junior employees now, with the right skills and the right tools, can actually have an outsized impact versus being kind of sandwiched down in their organization, which happens a lot. So the way the book is set up, CEO's faced with this kind of conundrum, like this kind of very like stark choice. And then he meets 3 people that like 3 heroes, and on the hero's journey, you always meet some sidekicks. And I'm one of the sidekicks, so I give him some advice. Our CEO is one of the sidekicks, and Nina, our chief human success officer. And we each come with different things that we encourage the CEO to do. Another thing is investing in people's capabilities and seeing that as an opportunity to grow. So giving them actually the tools they need to learn how to use AI, give them the time and the space to do so, and then measure the productivity increase and not the efficiency increase instead. And be able to work on a lot of the things that we hadn't been able to work on before. Because I can guarantee in every company, even in my company, every person has a laundry list of stuff. And you can either say, are we going to just get to the top 5%, 10%, 20%, and then cut everything else? Or can we actually now free up time so we can actually focus on much more? So you can either figure it from an efficiency perspective or a productivity perspective. And that's what we're trying to say here. But it only works actually if you're measuring how that actually helps impact ultimately growth. Because ultimately what, again, the board cares about, shareholders care about is like, are you increasing revenue? Are you increasing profitability? And so it has to be tied back to kind of the language that a CFO understands. So what we try to do, this is set up in a way that says, how do you tie this back to EBITDA, to profitability, to all these kind of terms that Wall Street understands, the CFOs understand? So you have a correlation between people's productivity, which has been very hard to do for the longest time. How do you have a correlation between people's productivity, growth, engagement, how they show up every day to actually the better outcome for the business. So we have something we call the Human Success Score that's based on a number of different metrics that you could kind of go calculate yourself, but we give you kind of an easy formula to do so, where you say, if our people are learning the right skills and they're deeply engaged in the work that they're doing and they have clarity on what they're trying to achieve, what score do you get? And it's honestly, it's modeled after the sleep score that you have. I don't know if you have a smartphone, a smart watch, or a Oura Ring or something. You get a sleep score every day, right? And or a fitness score. And that score in isolation, honestly, is kind of useless. But over time, if you look at it day after day and it gives you the pointers on what you can do better, you can start correlating that to how you should eat better, or maybe how you should exercise more, or maybe it's something to do with the environment you're in and so on. And so we said the Human Success Score has to be something simple that everybody can look at and understand, are we directionally actually heading in the right way of having our team engage in the things that they need to be engaged in order to actually grow the business. Because you're right, it comes down to very simple. We have to make something and we have to sell that. Ultimately, that's what business is in service of. So part of the pointer is like giving Evan, this fictional CEO, the tools and the language to show that investing in people is the right thing to do, and it's going to lead to better outcome. Because I can guarantee you one thing, I've been doing this long enough. If you ask any CEO around the world, what's the most important thing in your business? They always say the same thing. It's our people. Our people is the most important. We love our people, right? And then you go, well, what are you doing to make sure they have the right skills and they're growing and developing? And then they kind of glaze over. They don't really have a good answer for that. And the reason why is because it's been very hard to correlate that to the growth of the business. Even though everyone kind of instinctually knows you got to have employees who are motivated, like we talked about, but also who has the desire to grow and learn and develop and work well together. It's not just about learning new hard skills. It's also about how do you learn the soft skills as well. So, but unless you can correlate that to business growth, I can guarantee what's going to happen is companies are going to continue chasing what they've always chased, which is growth at all costs, regardless of what it does to the people or the impact it has on kind of the wider society. And I think if you look at what companies need to do in order to be successful today, it is about, do you actually stand by the people who have given so much to you and give them the opportunity to grow and develop in new ways that you couldn't prove before was valuable? So that's ultimately what we're trying to do.
I think also, like some of these like younger AI companies, the way that they're building their companies, what's interesting is that doesn't mean that they're AI companies. That's sort of like the tail wagging the dog or whatever. What's actually true is just that they're younger companies who now have AI as an option for building.
That's funny.
And they also happen to be AI companies, so they're much more likely to use it. But I think what people are sort of getting potentially a little bit wrong there is like, well, I'm not an AI company. That doesn't matter at all. You could be little Caspian Studios, you could be Zensai, you could be whoever. What they're seeing is that like, wait, the hierarchy that we built in like 1914 for a company, that it has this and that and this and that and like all these different functions, and this type of hierarchy is like, this might be wrong, right? And they're like, oh, and by the way, if you use AI as a sort of foundational like lever in your business that it could do X, Y, Z, they're like, oh, it turns out that having cross-functional meetings like way more often might be really beneficial, or or whatever it is, or whatever whatever form or format that you decide. And I think people just like, if you just, I don't know, if you just took the word replace and literally just like erased it from your vocabulary as you were planning, of like, we're not going to replace anything. The entire goal here is to generate more revenue, right? How are we going to 2x our revenue or 5x or whatever? And we are adding capacity onto this. How are we going to do that? What is a reorganization or whatever? I think people would be better off.
I agree. I totally agree.
But it's like you're already losing if you're saying like, hey, we're going to replace stuff, because inherently it's like if you have 100 people in your company and you're saying, oh, we need to cut 40% and like replace that with AI. It's like the way better thing to do is to say, we're going to make these 100 people feel like 200 or 300 people.
That's exactly
and that's going
right.
to generate a ton more revenue. It's like, why would you ever sacrifice growth, like sacrifice growing revenue when like just for cutting for cut's sake? So again, I think that's just like a losing proposition already. And if your company is like, oh, it's just like and again, cash is king, and cutting costs and all that is like, you're always going to cut costs. You're always going to figure that stuff out. But figuring out how to grow revenue is a far more exciting and interesting challenge.
One of my favorite authors of all time, the business guru Tom Peters. I don't know if you've ever read any of his work.
No,
In Search
I
of
haven't.
Excellence, and he's written many books. He wrote a book in the '90s called The Circle of Innovation, and I love that book. You should definitely check it out. I think it's right your jam. It's a lot about marketing. He said basically, which is my favorite quote, is you can't shrink your way to greatness. Tell me
Yeah.
one company in the history of time that has shrunken their way to greatness. It just doesn't work, right? I mean, sometimes, yes, you have to make some cuts because it's necessary to stay alive and as a company, but I've never seen a company shrink their way to greatness. You have to grow.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think that just like, as we know, it's just like the rhetoric is just wrong, that people are just cutting people because they want to
That's right.
cut. That's
right.
just like, it's just a lie, right? It's like,
Exactly.
but then why waste all these organizational calories and all these words and all the like covering it and whatever? It's just so much easier to write about layoffs and to talk about layoffs when like you just go, yeah, they're cutting people because they want to cut people. It's irrespective of
Exactly.
AI. It's
That's
just
right.
they're
That's right.
they're just cutting
That's right.
people to cut people, and they're going to hire all those people back. Like
That's
they're going
right.
to hire
That's
new
right.
people, but they're going to hire. They're not going to just like sit at that threshold forever. You know what I mean?
No.
That's like a
no.
ridiculous premise.
I think you hit on something super important. If you're a company that's, let's say, not profitable, and you're just kind of, fighting for survival every day, and I've been in many of those companies, then sometimes, yes, you have to do layoffs because you have to impact a few so the many can survive. It's tough, but it's necessary. And I've also had to been laid off myself. It's super tough. You question a lot of things about your skills and your ego and so on. So it's super tough both ways.
Yeah, me too.
But if you're sitting on mountains of cash and you're laying off people, then I think you have an extreme lack of courage. Like when I see Oracle lay off 30,000 people, you're sitting on boatloads of cash. Don't you have the courage to say, hey, okay, maybe not every one of those 30,000 people will survive this transition, but a lot of them probably have skills. Let's spend the next 6 to 12 months retraining them, giving them new skills, giving them new goals, unlocking their potential. Then I also think the social contract is broken. Some of these people have given 10, 20, maybe 25, 30 years of their life to this company, and then just being discarded like that feels a little off. And again, I'm not saying sometimes you don't have to do it. Of course, that's just kind of the business reality, but you also, I think, should think about this differently. And they chose the path of cutting and using AI as the excuse. You could choose the path of saying, let's see, with these 30,000 people, we're going to invest now the next maybe $2 billion over the next year to give them new tools, new skills, new goals. Maybe they'll come up with something brilliant that'll have the company, like you said, grow 50% in the next 5 years, which would be well worth that investment versus cutting, right? But it requires courage because it's easier to Wall Street and just go say, we're going to cut 30% of the company and get more efficient that way or whatever it is, right? And then the Wall Street cheers and the stock goes up and everything else. So it's about having vision, but it's also about having courage.
Yeah, and I think like, listen, I don't know. I'm not an armchair quarterback here. I don't know what's good for any of these organizations. I have no idea. But if your North Star is serving your customers and figuring out a way to make your team assembled in a way that delivers the maximum value for those people, like that. And if you're saying like, how can I use this tool or many AI tools to figure out how I can maximize the success of my customers, and therefore and as a leader saying, how can I maximize supporting my employees and to remove roadblocks and to remove bureaucracy and to increase speed and to do all of that so that they can deliver those results, like that's always the best way. And it's like, yeah, I do, before we get out of here, I wanted to ask you, so you wrote this book and you did something really cool. And to me, this feels like the future of books. And so I wanted to touch on it.
Sure.
So you wrote this book, the Human Success Playbook, which is really cool and a very cool narrative that follows this CEO and has all these different ideas in there about how an organization can transform, how they can think about AI, they can think about people and success and all of that. And you took it, and it's available for purchase. People should go purchase it on Amazon. And you also put it on your website, and you allow people to talk with the book or talk with the characters in the book.
Uh-huh.
And you know what I know? So this is so cool, and I haven't seen a lot of people do this. But Robin, what I've been doing lately is I've been listening to a podcast, reading a book. You know, you have that sort of multi-screen thing, and then I take all that information and I take it and I chuck it into. I take my notes, I take what I'm working on, I put them all into ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and I say apply this to my business. And so what you've done is you've done a little bit of the work for us by doing that.
That's right.
But I can't help but think that this is so representative of the future state, which is, hey, I'm going to go do a year's worth of work or more to write this book with these frameworks and all this sort of stuff to build a blueprint for you that you can immediately drag and drop it onto your business using AI so that you can just implement the stuff in the book extremely quickly.
That's right.
Like, that is the future. So it's like, I think that back in the day, it was like, oh, we're going to build podcasts, we're going to build books, we're going to build ebooks, we're going to build white papers, we're going to build all this stuff so that you could read it, distill, whatever. Whereas now you're building to say, hey, I'm going to build you the tools, I'm going to give it to you. Your AI instance or whatever already has all this information about where you want to go as a business. And now you get my framework to just bam, layer on top of it, and it can give you it. And then the humans got to go execute that strategy with the AI sort of like being that AI brain. Like, that's so clearly going to happen everywhere. And I'm just curious how you arrived to that.
I think you absolutely nailed it. We just wanted people to have access to all the inspiration in the book and be able to actually make it specific for their company. The hard thing about writing a book is it's, a lot of it is like fairly high level, and there's some frameworks, absolutely, like you said, but it's also every company is different. The way they operate, the way they lead, the values they have, the way they measure success. So this here becomes a way of going in and saying, I want the playbook for me. I'm a 500 person manufacturing company in Germany, versus I'm a 2,000 person small bank in the Midwest in the US. Like, the way you can operate is going to be completely different.
Yep.
So you can take some of this advice that's a little bit high level and generic, and you can like make it very specific for you. Like, what should I do here? What is the advice that you would give me? And you can get it in the voice of myself or Rasmus or Nina, or maybe even like just the book in general. But it's also kind of why we wrote the book. I mean, you're a master at storytelling and content creation, and you've been doing this for a long time, longer than anybody I really know. And we're a small company in the grand scheme of things. We compete against very big players in our space. The big three are like Oracle, SAP, and Workday. And I can't compete with them on just like trying to spend more on digital channels. It's just not going to work. So the way that we weigh, I think we have an insanely great product. We have an insanely great story. It's by trying to do something differently. And that's what we're trying to do with the book, is by trying to get the attention of people saying, we're a different kind of person, different kind of company to do business with. I learned that from my Salesforce days, honestly. In the early Salesforce days, we couldn't compete with some of these big players in terms of just spend or brand awareness, but they won by doing things differently. And I'm trying to take that same kind of marketing hat on here and say, what can we do that's different and provides inspiration in a time when people have need for inspiration, need for certainty, need for guidance, and this is what we're trying to do. And I think it's been super fun. We released the book in early May, and we've already had about 2,000 copies out in the wild. We've been sending it out. We've been having people buy it. It's been great. I mean, it was never meant to be like a huge bestseller. I didn't expect that to happen, but it's a way to like have the conversation, with customers and with potential customers about what this should look like. So we've become a trusted source for guiding them through this uncertainty that everybody's feeling right now.
I went into the platform, so you can just go to zensai.com /report/ the Human Success Playbook, and we'll link it up in the show notes. But you can go and you can just query it. And so like one of the things I was like, I didn't know what the trifecta was. So I was like, hey, what's the trifecta? Because that's one of the things from the book. So you can go like, learn that there. And then I could ask Robin directly, hey, I'm having trouble scaling marketing. And then it gives a bunch of answers. And then I was like, hey, should I do one-on-ones? And then it gave me sort of an answer on one-on-ones. And you just see like, it's such a different thing. And I think if you pair this with the talk to a human button, and it's like, well, imagine if then, so you always wonder like, well, if AI is doing all this stuff, then what would humans do? Well, what humans would do in this exact case is then talk to this person. Say, hey, you've been like communicating with this book, asking XYZ. Do you want to like hop on a call and like actually talk? Like, spill your guts to me. Tell me like, hey, I am the real Robin. Like, do you want to talk to me? Like, are there additional questions that you would like to know? And let's say that person is the chief human resources officer at a Fortune 500 company. Of course, you'd want to do that. So like, that is this next level of this sort of like providing a framework, allowing them to layer it under their business, like taking the work, building the framework, giving it to them, wrapping it in a narrative, allowing them to sort of engage in the way that they want, allowing them to use a combination of your AI and their AI and all that. And then having this final piece of like, do you want to talk to a human? And then, by the way, we also have software that helps with this. But it's really about solving their problem rather than like chucking out marketing materials that they're going to just like hopefully download to hopefully buy from you someday.
Building a company for the future is about leadership, vision, culture. And at some point, you also need the right tools. And that's where we as a company come in. But it doesn't start there. It starts from, that's also why the book is, it's about lots of other things. And just, it's not about platform. We don't even talk about the platform book, but it's about, at some point, you have to, of course, have the right tools. Whether you use us or something else, that's kind of beside the point. But it's like, where do you start? Where do you build the foundation of that? And then the tools are just added on top of that, of course.
Amazing. Robin, so awesome having you on the show. Our listeners go to zensai.com to learn more. Any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
No, nothing to plug. Just like I'm super grateful for our friendship, honestly, and just the long relationship we've had. And anybody who wants to go either chat with me, my digital version of myself, or my real version, just connect with me on LinkedIn. But if you want to chat with my digital version, you can just go to zensai.com and find me there as well.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Robin. This is awesome. Congrats on the book. Congrats on being an author.
Thank you.
And we wish you the best.
All right, man. Thanks, Ian.